Hey everybody, welcome into the Mailbag powered by MondoPad. I am Sarah Hecht, joined by Casey Holdahl from the road in Chicago, rounding out this long road trip. And of course, it's time for us to take some of your questions. Are you ready for them, Case?
Let's do it.
All right, first one comes from Bobby Nove, and he says, is it possible to move up and not play the Rockets in round one, or is that a lock now?
Well, I think it's mathematically possible, but as far as what's feasible, no. Because basically right now, if the Trailblazers did move up into the fourth spot, they'd still probably play the Houston Rockets in the fifth spot. So if your concern is playing the Houston Rockets and you don't care so much if it's home or away, then that probably doesn't solve the problem for you. Really, I mean, if you want to be honest, the most likely scenario, if you really want to ditch the Rockets, is the Blazers dropping down to the sixth or seventh spot and playing either, in that instance, the Clippers or Oklahoma City. So I don't know that either one of those are necessarily a whole lot better than the Rockets either. But as far as moving up and missing the Rockets, not likely, because the Rockets are almost guaranteed to end up in either the fourth or the fifth spot at this point. And like I said, if you end up in the fourth spot, you end up playing the 5 seed, and that would most likely be the Houston Rockets. So it's possible that the Trailblazers don't play the Rockets, but if they don't, it'll most likely be because they fell back to either 6 or 7 or 8, I guess, is still potentially possible. But as far as moving up goes, not really likely at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And to ease maybe some of your mind in fear in playing the Rockets, I know that a lot of us have a fear. It's just being reported today that Patrick Beverley has suffered an injury to his meniscus. Who knows how that will play out? But he is a big piece in that offensive attack and facilitating for James Harden and Dwight Howard. So maybe things aren't quite as scary with the Trailblazers potentially facing the Rockets as they would have been with Patrick Beverley out there on the floor.
Absolutely. Patrick Beverley, too, defensively as well, is
Yes.
an absolute error at the guard position. So.
Indeed. All right, well, let's move on to a second question. Thank you for that one, Bobby. This one comes from Zachary Smith, and he said, what's the word on Joel Freeland? How is he rehabbing, and when is a possible return date?
Joel is rehabbing well. Supposedly he's being put through the paces at this point. I think they're still targeting the playoffs for Joel to return. Joe Freeman and I talked about it a bit on our podcast last week, that bringing a guy back to start in the playoffs seems tough. So, gut feeling, if you maybe played in 1 or 2 games before the end of the regular season, that would not at all surprise me. But I think at this point they're taking kind of a long view approach with Joel. And he is getting better. He is starting to, at least he's doing things on court. Not a ton of stuff, but he is back on court doing some shooting, doing some running. I think playing a little bit of light 1-on-1, 2-on-2 with guys out there. So, at this point, it's hard to really say when is Joel Freeland going to be back, because, injuries are tricky, and it's especially when it's something like a knee injury and it's meniscus, or excuse me, I guess in that case MCL. It heals when it heals, and so it's one of those things where, when that stability comes back is when it's ready, and he's going to be wearing a knee brace for the rest of the year, so that'll help him a bit. But at this point, I think the target is for the start of the playoffs, but I think maybe the team is hopeful that maybe he's able to get 1 or 2 games in before that.
Yeah, and his response is always, it's just chugging along, and he'll tell you that he was anticipating the 4 to 8 weeks, didn't realize that he was going to be one of those guys where it just takes a little bit longer to get the stability. He has said that he doesn't have pain, which is something that you think, okay, well, you can come back when you're not feeling pain from an injury, but in something like this, when it has to do with the stability is the same as pain for when it comes to returning. You can't return if you don't have all that stability back in there. And Joel, every time I talk to him, says that he's just chugging along, keeping his eyes up. They don't have a date yet, but definitely hoping to come back for the postseason, as you said. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to...
Anyone who's had a soft tissue injury in their knee knows that it's not really all that painful. If you ever tore your ACL before, aside from the initial tearing, it doesn't really hurt all that bad, but it's the actual getting the stability back that takes a long time. And for some people, myself included, it doesn't ever always come all the way back when you don't do your rehab as well as you should. So luckily that's not...
Yeah, that will definitely not be the case for Joel Freeland, who is surrounded by the best of the best. Well, thank you so much for joining us from the road and taking the time. Casey, hopefully you guys can get another win down there in Chicago today and come home on a little bit of a streak. Thank you guys for submitting your questions using the hashtag TBMailbag, and stick around to Twitter because we'll be announcing when we'll be doing another one of these and taking more of your questions as the playoffs rapidly approach. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.